with a series on principle-based martial arts training and how these principles really should be in all the different arts we train in, okay? They're universal principles. You know, a lot of people think they're only unique to maybe one type of martial art or another. And usually those people are only doing that art, all right? But when you're like me and you train in several arts, okay, and you teach several arts, one of the things I began to realize is when these principles were being introduced to me by various teachers, right? I realized, well, wait a second, why isn't that in this art I'm doing? Why isn't it in that art I'm doing, all right? And as I started to do that, I realized my physical ability improved dramatically, okay? So that's what I'm hoping these do. I'm hoping these will foster some thought, especially amongst my friends that do other arts like karate, jiu-jitsu, kobudo, other weapons training, where you can see how these principles apply to everything, all right? So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about tossing. We use the word tossing when we're talking about like in Chinese martial arts, or specifically Chen style Tai Chi Chuan. And think of tossing as moving in balance, okay? Or balanced movement, all right? So this principle we also have in the Kempo Gokui, which is from the Bubishi. And the principle roughly translated means the body must be able to change direction at all times, okay? Now, it doesn't say some of the time or most of the time. It says the body must be able to change direction at all time. Okay, so what do we mean by not tossing? So, in terms of Tai Chi, we have the opening of the form where we start like this and we come up and then we turn, this leg comes over, and now this heel goes out. And now, as this heel goes out, right, everybody wants to do this. They want to get real wide and low so they fall on the foot. That's a toss because you can't change direction, okay? So when I initially teach it, I teach it to do this here, and I just have people do that because, see, this is moving in balance. Then shift the weight, then do the next move. So this is going to become a pattern where you move in a certain way and then the weight shifts. Then you do the next move, all right? So I often tell students when they ask me, if I see a video of someone practicing the Yilu, and on the first, this initial move where we're here and we come here, if I see them do that, where their whole body shifts and they drop the weight on the front foot, I don't watch anymore. I just don't watch anymore. Because again, you have to pay attention. This is what the first move in the form, and you're tossing already. That tells me you're going to toss throughout the form, okay? So the way I want to do it is I want to come here, and then I want to do this. So look at my head. My head stays in an elevator shaft. It doesn't move forward. Look how wide. Now I can bring this back, right? Okay? Now I'm here. Now I shift. Now I turn. Now I come up and do my next move, okay? So again, I'm able to change direction, all right? So how does this apply in karate, all right? Well, there's plenty of places in our kata, and I see it all the time, all right? So initially, right, I learned the crescent step. So I learned Seisan kata, I'm learning Seisan kata, I'm taught to do this kind of footwork, right? So I start here and I do this, right? Now when I practice it, I try not to have too much of a movement here. I try to work it where my body moves a little. Now what you need to understand is in attempting to not toss, there's always going to be a small movement, okay? A small movement. But the idea is to make it a small movement. It shouldn't be, okay? So again, from here, I step and I try not to have this move, all right? So what was I told the reason for the crescent step? I was told the reason for the crescent step is to feel the ground as you walk. Because in Okinawa, when karate was originally developed, there's no lights and it's very dark. And if you're in a fight, you have to feel the ground. Okay, when I'm 15 years old, I buy this nonsense. And then as I get older and I start engaging in actual fights as a New York City police officer, okay, you're not checking the ground, all right? You're not feeling, you're moving. And when you're moving, okay? So this is really about not tossing. So what do I mean by that? So if I just come out and step forward like that, I'm committed to this one direction. So now it's very difficult for me to change direction. But if I do this, I'm able to change my directions, okay? So when I come out and I practice Seisan and I come here and then I punch and then I'm here and then I punch and then, see, I'm always able to, right? So same thing here, right? And again, as I turn here, it would be the same thing. I don't just spin around and drop back, right? So if I'm here, right, I don't just do this and fall back, right? I'm here, this steps, and this line doesn't move. So again, the rod again, I'm here, right? I rotate this way and I stay right here and then drop, okay? So that's one aspect in one kata, right? So crane stance in karate, where we're in this stance here, all right? So as a green belt, I wanted to work on my balance more, right? So what I would do when I practice Seisan kata is I would step over and then I'd lock. And now the rod is here. It's through the shoulder, through the knee, into the foot. And then I do this. And I do that, right? And I would work that, right? And then I'd put the foot down. And then if I wanted to push off the rear foot, so after I would do this kick a couple of times, if I pushed off the rear foot, I made sure my body didn't do anything like this. Or like this, okay? So again, always moving in balance, all right? So this concept of not tossing is one of my biggest pet peeves, okay? You know, I see Ishinru people all over the place moving. I see Kobudo people all over the place moving with no concept of actually moving in balance, okay? Of living that poem, that stanza in the Kempo Gokui, the 8 poems of the fist, of the body must be able to change directions at all times, okay? So this is a big one, all right? So it's very important. So even when I go to kata like Chinto and Kusan-ku, where we have spins, yeah, of course, the spin is to work on spinning in place, and can you do that and maintain balance? And of course, that's fine. So if I'm working the spin, I turn, but you see I stayed in the same place, right? But I also train where I practice it like this, where I move in, and now I just step and come here and do the block, all right? So when I come here and I do this, and here in Shinto, I don't just spin, I step. I step and then I rotate and do the low block. So I practice my kata many different ways. Sometimes 100% sticking to the principles as much as I can. Because remember, we're moving. So of course, there's always going to be that slight movement when you try not to toss. There has to be. Why? Because you're moving. You're shifting your weight, okay? But what I don't want to be doing is I don't want to be doing things like this. So here's a prime example in Shinto, where we come back and do this, right? And everybody falls back on the rear foot. Now I'm on the rear foot, I'm stuck. So now I have to push off to move. No, it should be here, right? Here, right? Now I move, right? Whatever move it is I'm doing. So I'm moving in balance, okay? This is incredibly important, all right? Same exact thing in jiu-jitsu. If I'm doing a throw and I'm moving in to throw somebody, I'm not stepping and pushing against them if I'm trying to throw them this way. I pull them towards me, and once I'm here, I have to be in balance. So as I move, this is here, right? So as I move, this is here, right? And then from here, I do my throw. So, not tossing, crazy important, all right? It's something that needs to be emphasized in everything. So I'm on Okinawa, and I do Shujin Nun, and I get lazy. I admit it, I get lazy. And Yogi Yosei Sensei says, choto mate, which means wait a minute in Japanese. Michael, no. And what I had done was, I was practicing Shushin Nun, and I'd done this, and my left foot just went like that, directly back. But the problem is when you do that, Now I'm stuck here. I'm not in the proper position. And that's what Yogi Sensei got on me about. He says, no, you cannot move like that because you cannot change. You're stuck, right? I said, Sensei, I know, I was my mistake. And then I do this, right? So when I teach it, this is how I teach it. I teach it like this, and then the left foot goes back and I strike, right? Again, could be that splitting power we talked about in the previous video. So one of the ways you check is you do this. So from the side, when I do this, right, I'm here, right? Okay? So, and then this applies to everything. So the next move in Shushin Okun would be this foot coming up. So again, watch the rod. The rod doesn't move. Now it shifts, right? It shifts, but my feet are still light that I can move, okay? You'll see this all throughout Kobudo. So you want to make sure that you can always move. So recently I went back to New York. I was doing Shishin Okun, which is the 5th Bokata Mariyoshi Kobudo. And I did this technique here. I came up, I did this. I went here, here, here. And when I spun, I did that. So from here, I spun and I did that. So I maintained my balance throughout the spin and put the foot down. Then here. One of my senior students in New York immediately said, hold on a second, do that again. I don't understand how you can control that like that. So I did it. I showed it to him. He says, all right, let me film it. So he filmed it so he could continue to work on it after I leave. So one of the things in my own personal martial arts is I try to always move in balance, which means not tossing, okay? I try to live that rule in a Kempo Gokui of the body should be able to change directions at all times, okay? This is extremely important, all right? Because if you don't do it, you're not going to reach high levels of movement, all right? So also in moving like this, your movement is more restricted, smaller, more precise, okay? But as you learn how to move like this, your body will only want to move like this because you're in balance all the time. Now again, as we get older, okay, I am now in that camp. I will be 61 in a couple of months, right? As we get older, we want to be able to move in balance, okay? We all know people that get to a certain age, they take a fall, they're falling all the time, and that begins their downward spiral. We want to avoid that, all right? And learning to move in balance will help that. So let me show you, give you another example of this principle from Katori Shinto-ryu. Katori Shinto-ryu, we have a weapon called the Nagata. So this would be a blade from about here up, okay? You can see it's a pretty tall weapon, longer than a bow. All right. So there's one particular move that when you initially learn the Nagata kata is extremely difficult. And everybody that, when I learned it, I had trouble with it. Everybody I teach has trouble with it initially. And that's just the way it is. It's a difficult move, right? And that's one of the things that makes the Nagata kata of Katori Shinto-ryu to me very special, okay? And I know Sugino Sensei feels the same way. So we have a technique where we come like this. So we're in like a cat stance, right? So we pull back here, and this is in front of your body protecting, so your body's behind it, right? So now you step like this. So now if you watch when I'm here, right, and I step, I don't let this shift, and I don't fall on this foot, right? So from here, this comes here. Now it shifts, and this heel comes up, the left heel. Now, my arms don't move, so watch where I am. I'm going to spin like this, and see I wind up in the same place. Now from here, this foot goes back, and we cut across the midsection. So again, I'm here. This shift occurs. Now look, this leg is free, right? Now I spin. Now look, this leg is free. And now I cut. So again, that principle of being able to change direction at all times is clear in this move from the Katori Shinto-ryu Nagata kata. All right. Swordsmanship's the same. Okay. It's not about the foot going forward and doing that when you cut with a sword, because you'll be off balance, you'll be in trouble. All right. So everything is about that moving in balance. All right. So as we do it, to give you an idea, I'll go back to practical method, Chen style Taiji Chuan, practical method. We're here in the beginning, and now we have to pull up, right? So everybody does this. See how my body just shifted forward? Okay. So what we want to do is pull here. And see how this part of my body never moved? So I'm here. This comes up, and then here. Okay. Now here, right? So now we do block, touching, coat. All right. So a lot of people do this. See how my head moved? No, you can't do that. So see? So you have to be from here, right? You have to be able to do this, right? So from here, here. Now my weight shifts. Now I do my techniques. Now you'll see the splitting, right? Splitting here. So same thing on a move like this, right? When I'm here and I turn, this foot has to be completely free. Now I'm here. Now as I do this, right? Now as I go to single whip, I can't do this. See how the head moved? I have to do this. I have to do this. Then the weight shifts and we come here. Now eventually, so let's take Ishinru. In the beginning, I'm teaching Seisan, right? And I'm having them do this big movement with the foot. Punch. Big movement with the foot. Punch. Eventually, this all smooths out where you come here, right? And this moves and punch, right? Moves, punch, right? So it smooths out. Also, as you learn to move in balance, you don't have to do the big crescent step, okay? So as you learn to move in balance, right, you can just step like that. See? I can still move my foot, right? So I'm here, right? Now it's a very small action, right? Here. Now I'm here, right? It's already there. So you need to go back. Whatever art you're doing, you need to check your balance points on everything. If when you're in a position, you can't change direction, there's a problem, okay? And like I said, in Shinto and Kusanku, where we have the spins, people say, oh, well, you know, Calandra, but what about those? Again, that's serving a purpose. You're learning to spin in place. Can you spin in place and maintain your balance? We actually have some movement like that in the Chen form also, okay? In the Yilu. So, and also in the sword form. All right. So there are some things that, you know, want to maybe violate the rules, and you're going to see that throughout this series. That'll come up more and more as we do it. But like I said, every time you move, you want to try not to toss. So if you move like this, that's a toss because you're committed. So in the middle of that move, you can't change. You have to land here and then push off to come back. But if you do this, now, right, if I do this, I can pull this foot back, right? I can now move forward, all right? So this is important, right? And again, I'll demonstrate one more small section of the Yilu, right, which is twisting steps, right? And we come here, right? So now as we come here, right, and we turn, right, so you watch my head. Everybody does this. But what you have to work on is you have to work on this. This has to rotate here. So the head doesn't move. It stays here, right? So now, right? And then you shift and do your fetch water. So these moves, these types of movements are throughout every form you practice, okay? So whether I'm practicing Shihei Kwan, Chen style Taiji Chuan practical method, Ishinru karate, Mariyoshi kobudo, Sosui shitsuru jujitsu, whatever I'm practicing, okay, I'm working the same thing. I'll give you one final example of where I also found this was in the art of Shindo Musudo Jodo. This is a Jo, 4-foot staff. Okay, you can see it's much shorter than Nagata. Shindo Musudo Jodo is the premier stick fighting art in Japan. Most of the techniques are Jo against a sword, all right? It's a police martial art, all right? It's been around since about 1600, so quite a while, all right? I studied it for about 30 years. I'm not teaching it anymore, but I was practiced it for quite a while. So they have a technique called Hikyo-toshi, all right? So Hikyo-toshi, right, you come here and you draw back, right? And then what you do is this comes up and you strike the sword, but you want to slide down the sword to knock the sword behind. So the sword does this, right? So when I'm here, it's this. And then you come up and thrust the jo between the opponent's eyes. Okay. So I used to watch people, and a lot of them would do this. They would do this. And the weight would be very forward, right? Because they're trying to get as much power into the jo as possible. So when I started working on these principles and examining them in all the arts I did, I realized what I should be doing here when I do hikyotoshi, right, is I should be rotating. So I started doing this, right? So I started come here, and then see how easy the foot goes, and now I'm here. So I'm not off balance, and if I have to, I can come back. So if I do this and I overcommit here, I can't change. So what I started doing is just rotating here in place. So this would come up here, and then I'd step and come up. So again, I'm just giving you another example of seeing where these principles are everywhere. All right, you have to look for them. Look, I'm still looking for them. All right, I'm sure a lot of people, see me do things and say, "Oh, Calandra says don't toss," but he's tossing there. And yeah, I'm sure I do sometimes on certain moves. Right, I'm still working on it. I like to tell the story where about 7 or 8 years ago, I'm practicing the yilu, the form from the Chen style Tai Chi Chuan practical method. And I'm getting near the end, and I do this move, and in my head, I immediately said to myself, "Idiot," right? And I finished the form, and then I went back, and I just was doing that move by myself. And I realized I was tossing on that move. And I immediately corrected it, and I worked on it till I was doing it where I'm not tossing. And I'm sure, as I continue my practice, I will realize there's certain parts of whatever form I'm working on, from whatever martial art I'm doing, where I'm not moving in balance, where I'm tossing, I'm not able to change direction, all right? So, tossing, extremely important. This is the first principle I emphasize when I teach the yilu form of Chen style Tai Chi Chuan practical method. I emphasize it in karate, in kobudo. So this is the first principle I really start to emphasize. Because if you can get a feeling of this in the beginning, it helps to get all the other principles as I layer the different principles on in each martial art. All right? So, hope you've enjoyed this one. Don't toss, all right? Even though, like I said, you will be doing a small movement or a small toss on each of the moves. However, you don't want it in your head thinking it like this. Well, I'll just toss a little bit. No. Our mantra is, don't toss. Don't toss. And then if you do a very, very minute toss, believe me, you're moving light years ahead of the way most people are moving in martial arts. So, hope you enjoyed this one. All right. I'll see you in the next video when we tackle another principle-based point of martial arts training. Take care.